Hello and welcome back to Rev Real Estate School. I'm your host, Michael Montgomery. And today what we're talking about are mic drop objection handlers. So these are objection handlers that I find work extremely well. We're going to look at these under a few different circumstances. So we're going to unpack, say, like a fee objection handler, a pricing objection handler, closing objection handlers. But what we're really focusing on here is not the whole objection handler, but instead that kind of mic drop moment. Now, these are fun. These tend to be points in time in the conversation where you can really get your point across. And what you're going to notice with some of these are more focused around questioning, while others are more focused around statements. Now, if you want to know more about objection handling, in the description below, we will link up an objection handling document. And within there, you can read through how to objection handle using all of the steps. However, what we're touching on here, again, are these kind of mic drop or these big moments in the objection handling actual script that you'll use in order to overcome certain objections. So let's dive in. So the first one we need to understand is clarification. This is actually where a lot of agents go wrong, where we end up actually handling the objection before we know what the true objection is. Now, oftentimes people are going to give an objection to us, but that won't necessarily be the true objection. It will be a smokescreen in many ways. They're going to object to something when in fact they're objecting to something else, but they're just using this as a smokescreen. So what's an example of this? Well, an example of this could be fees, by them saying that the fee is too high. Okay, so if the fee is too high, we can handle that objection. However, there could be something else at play here. So how do we go about clarifying? Now, clarification is actually relatively simple. All we have to say is, aside from objection, do you have any other concerns? So aside from fees, do you have any other concerns? Now, this can be kind of nerve-wracking for us, but what we're going to find out is we're going to get to the heart of the objection. Because if they say something after that, anything that they say, that's the true objection. So if they say, well, the pricing is a little off in my opinion, okay, then we handle that because the fees was more of a smokescreen. So all we're doing here is clarifying, and this is such a great line. Aside from objection, do you have any other concerns? And then we're really trying to get to the bottom of that individual concern. Next, we have a big one. We have fees. So when we are getting objections as far as fee structure is concerned, there's a number of different approaches that we can take to this. However, if you want a mic drop line, all you need to say is cheap can be expensive. Cheap can be expensive. And in fact, where this objection handler came from was from a client, actually from a recent client. And we were discussing fees. And she said, you know what? Sometimes cheap is expensive. And I thought to myself after that, that is so true. And it's actually such a great line. And I've used this line multiple times now, and it's extremely effective. It helps people really contextualize that sometimes price and what people are getting, like sometimes those things aren't fully aligned. Now, what we're saying here is that you get what you pay for, but we're saying this in a great way. We're saying cheap can be, or cheap is expensive, and then see where they take it from there. So help them understand that the fee itself and then what they're getting out of that, those at times can be quite closely aligned. The next one is pricing. And so if we're going through kind of the sales process here and we land on pricing, oftentimes where the objection is going to be is that they're going to want to start the price higher. Now with that, the way that we can approach this is by simply letting them know the risks. So the way that I tend to frame this is by saying, if we start higher, we have to be comfortable with more risk. We have to be riskier with our investment. And here's why. And then you can get into the fact that more time on market opens us up to lower offers. The current buyer pool that's out there is our highest likelihood of securing the best offer. So what we're really getting to here is the fact that if we want to start high, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. However, you have to be a little bit more risky. So if you are a more risk tolerant individual, then starting higher might end up working for you. However, if we want to maintain a lower risk threshold, then starting in that market value or even starting below the market value in order to drive the price up is our least risky option. So what's at play here? Really, when it comes to real estate and when it comes to these massive assets, people don't tend to want to be risky. They want to tend to avoid risk. And so, if we are stating to them that starting high equals being risky, then from there, they're able to make a decision and understand, well, I don't necessarily want to be risky with this size of an investment. I want to actually lower my risk. And so, coming in at that market value can make a lot more sense. This is a very effective way to approach folks that really want to start higher, is just letting them know that they have to have a higher risk tolerance then. This leads us to the next one, and one that a lot of agents can struggle with, and it's why you? It's kind of that question that comes up that we all hope it doesn't actually arise in a meeting, when actually we should. This is really our opportunity to showcase our skill set. However, when they ask us why you, or when they ask us anything, one of my favorite responses to this is, let me tell you why other people have selected me, or let me tell you why our clients have been choosing us. Now, this seems quite simple, but what we're doing here is we're allowing us to take away this concept of negativity. Let me say why people are choosing us. So if they say why you, instead of us then talking about why other agents are bad, we say, let's talk about why we are the right fit. Now, what I love about this is you can actually use this handler in any circumstances. So let's say there is a fee objection, okay? And you said, sometimes cheap is expensive. And then you continue to go down that road and that objection continues to come up. Ultimately, you can land on, well, let me tell you a little bit more why people choose us. It can handle almost any objection. Anytime somebody's objecting to our service, you can always flip that script, reframe it as to why people do choose you. And this will actually quiet the majority of objections out there that are relating to signing a listing contract with us or working with us as a buyer's agent. Next, let's move on to decision making. And so when it comes to decision making, these aren't necessarily objections as much as we have to think about how we're going to position our wording and position our suggestions to them in a way that helps them make their own decisions. So we're going to look at a few different structures here and a few different things that can come up to help people make the best decision for themselves. So the first one, and I use this all the time, is letting people know that there's no right or wrong answer. And so if you ever overheard some of my calls, oftentimes in these calls where I'm strategizing with a seller or a buyer, I'm oftentimes saying there's no right or wrong here. There's just what you'd like to do. There's no right or wrong. If you want to price high, that's fine. You just have to be more risk tolerant. If you want to price low, that's fine. You just have to understand that we could end up having a very quick sale. So as far as where we're at right now, when it comes down to right or wrong, there isn't any right or wrong. There really isn't. It just comes down to the individual and what they want to do. So oftentimes I will preface anything I'm saying by saying that there's no right or wrong to this, but here are the pros and cons. And it's a really good way to work yourself into helping somebody make the best decision for themselves. The next one is when they are considering going and buying a home on their own, and they need to make that decision. So maybe that means that they are going new construction and they're potentially wanting to go directly to the builder, or they want to go directly to the listing agent. So this works very, very well when it comes to handling buyers. It can also help with sellers if seller wants to go FSBO or they want to go put their home on the market on their own. So how do we approach this? Well, basically, we need to explain what it is that we do, but also give them the option to go at it alone. And that is the moment right there. So you could do X. I can help you with your new construction purchase, negotiate on your behalf, help facilitate the transaction, make sure that you're well taken care of, or you can go at it alone. And that is the trick right there, is go at it alone. Now, there again, there's nothing wrong with this. If somebody wants to go at it alone, let them. However, by using this wording, this causes people to pause. They think to themselves, do I really want to go at this level of a transaction alone? They start to question what it means to actually represent themselves in the face of buying a home or selling a home. So by using this phrasing, go at it alone, this helps seed doubt. It seeds doubt as to their decision to do this on their own may not be the right one. It may be the right one. It may work perfectly for them. However, that's not my decision. If they do want to have the service, they can, or they can go at it alone. Very, very effective. The next one, and you've heard this one before, really comes down to buyer criteria when it comes to decision making, where buyers always want the house, the price, and the location. They want those three things. And oftentimes buyers are going to say to you, if only we could pick this house up and put it down over there. Well, this is an opportunity for us to bring up the house, price, and location. Buyers want all three. They want the perfect house for the right price and in the right location. However, there's a key to this. The key is they can only have two. So if they want the right price and they want the right house, they may have to change location. If they want the right location and they need the right price, they may have to make some sacrifices on the home. So this helps them start to understand, again, decision making. It helps them prioritize what it is that they're looking for and helps them understand that that perfect 10 out of 10 home doesn't exist. And as soon as we start understanding the fact that we're not going to find a 10 out of 10, it allows them freedom to select a home that isn't perfect. Next, we have appointment setting. Now, when it comes to setting appointments, oftentimes we want to ensure that we have something on the calendar. However, oftentimes what we will get is somebody saying, oh, call me back next week or call me back around this point in time, where we don't actually have a set time. So how can we approach this? The way that we approach this is simply saying, why don't we put something on the calendar so I don't call you at the worst possible time? So what we're doing here is we're basically indicating to them that we could call you at a very, very bad time. So by saying, why don't we put something on the calendar so I don't call you at the worst possible time, you are securing the appointment while also being mindful of the fact that they could be busy and you could be calling them at the wrong time. So this is actually creates some humor into the whole conversation, because what we're saying here, of course, is that we don't want to call them at the wrong time. So this is going to be a very effective way. If you're just having trouble actually securing that appointment and actually getting that onto the calendar, this line works perfectly. Now, what if you're on a call or you make a call and that person's not expecting you, or you're making outbound dials? So how do we approach this conversation if it feels like a cold call? So if we are working more online leads and from there we're trying to create connections with these people, it can be quite challenging. So oftentimes we're going to get some resistance right off the start. So what do we say when we get resistance on calls? Well, a really nice way to lower their guard is simply saying, do you hate receiving these calls as much as I hate making them? So this works very well in a cold call environment. Doesn't work well at all when you are talking to somebody in your SOI. It's somebody before they're in your SOI that you would have this conversation with them. And you're letting them know that, hey, you know what? I understand you didn't want me to call you right now. However, these aren't my favorite things to make anyways. And then from there, you actually end up lowering their guard and you can get into a quick conversation. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to close them right off the bat, but it does add some humor. It does add some personality into these conversations. So that's typically what's lacking. When you pick up the phone and call your SOI, they're excited to hear from you. They're happy to chat with you. However, when it's somebody who doesn't know you, myself included, if I'm getting cold called, I don't love it either. And therefore, if we are going to choose that as a method of actually trying to get people into our database, which is perfectly fine, but if we are going to deal with resistance. And when we have that resistance, we can use lines like this that add some personality into our calls. Now, finally, how do we go about closing? So when it comes to closing, this is closing a client. So this isn't necessarily getting a buyer to buy a house, because in fact, that in my opinion isn't necessarily closing. Closing for me is a client saying, yes, I want to work with you. Them choosing a house is just part of customer experience. I want to make sure they find the right house, but I first want to make sure that they choose me as an agent. So how do we go about closing them on us as an agent? Well, we use what's called the perfect close. It works very, very simply and it works well. All we have to say is, based on what I've heard today, the suggested next step is X. So what I suggest as a next step is this. So for example, let's say that you're doing a listing presentation. You can say to the seller, based on our discussion today, what I'd suggest our next step is signing the listing contract and then getting the photos ordered, let's say. So what you're doing here is you are suggesting the next step. You have to make a suggestion. Now, oftentimes with closing, we want like the perfect wording, and there is no perfect wording for it. We just have to make a suggestion. We just have to suggest to move the deal forward. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes the seller may say no to that. Now, when they decline your first suggestion, you downgrade the ask. So instead of that, let's say they said no to that, you say, no problem. Why don't we do this? Why don't we jump on Zoom tomorrow? We can talk about any questions that come up. Okay. And so what we're doing is we're moving it from a listing contract to a follow-up meeting. Okay. So we're downgrading that ask. We're making that easier for them to say yes to. Now, if they decline the second one, then you can simply ask them what they would like to do as a next step. So we have the suggested next step, we downgrade the ask, and then following that, we then move into what would you like to do as the best next step. So we're allowing them some decision making in this, of course, as well. But we want to make a suggestion. That's why they're hiring us. They want us to make a suggestion as well. And then we downgrade the ask, and then we move into what they would like to do as the best next step. Now, finally, this one works very, very well when it comes to closing. And basically, what we're saying is, would it be a horrible idea to, and then your suggestion. So, would it be a horrible idea for us to list your home? And if you weren't satisfied within 1 week, you can cancel the listing agreement, no questions asked. So, what we're doing here is we're saying, would it be a horrible idea? Because that wouldn't actually be a horrible idea, would it? So, what we're saying here is, would it be a horrible idea if we were to list the home? And then from there, if it wasn't to work out, we can cancel the listing agreement within 1 week or something like that. So, the key word there is, would it be a horrible idea if? And what we're doing here is it's very hard for them to say, yes, that's a horrible idea. It's oftentimes, no, that's not a horrible idea. So then it allows that conversation to continue. I love this line because it really decreases the pressure of the given ask. And it's very hard for somebody to say, yes, that is a horrible idea. So there are some objection handling tips for you, some mic drop moments that you can use when you are handling objections in real estate. Thank you very much for watching or listening to this episode. Remember, you can reach out anytime at revrealestateschool.com, or I'm on Instagram at the.michael.montgomery. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next lesson.